All right. Hey, lucky me here. I'm speaking to author Russell Heath, but he's not only an author, he's got a long resume of very interesting accomplishments. Former lobbyist, personal leadership coach, pens an Alaskan we're going to talk about, a political, was that a thriller? I don't know. It's as exciting. And also we've been involved with water. I got a buddy, Reed Stowe, went around the world, the Mother Earth a couple of times in his boat, 3 times for 1,152 days. And this gentleman also went out for on a 25-foot boat and did some traveling of the shores. And he's why do you do all these things? Aren't you happy just like staying home at night?
No.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Russell, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about the book, because it's very interesting, and your life is very interesting. So you don't like staying home. You never like to stay home at night?
Oh, sometimes I do. You know, when it's blowing and there's a gale and the wind's lashing the windows and you got a wood fire going and a really good book, or your sweeties with you, then yeah, it might be worth staying home a night or two.
But those other nights, what makes somebody a lobbyist? They're upset with things? Are they passionate with something? What is it? What made you a lobbyist in Alaska?
Well, that's a good question. So I was the environmental lobbyist. I represented the Alaska environmental community in the Alaska state legislature. And there are a few things that interested me in becoming that. One is, yes, I was really committed to seeing Alaska and its extraordinary beauties managed well. And two is that, there's a personal thing for me too, and that I tend to be very introverted and very comfortable on my own. But being in a legislature, you're not going to be a good lobbyist if you're introverted, if you're on your own, if you're a wallflower. You've got to go out there and you've got to talk to people and you've got to listen to them and you've got to testify and you have to give talks and sometimes you have to get angry. Have to pound the table a little bit. Do your little Khrushchev thing with your shoe, and those were all challenges for me as a lobbyist way back, when I was doing that.
Okay. Where'd you grow up? You grew up in Alaska?
No, I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and from like my third day of life, I decided that suburbs weren't for me, and I was trying to get out of there from the very beginning. So I left as soon as I could.
So it wasn't Rocky who inspired you?
No, I don't think Rocky had happened yet. I'm a little older than that, Paul.
But you have a lot of good spirit. So tell us about, congratulations. I think you've written some other books too. Tell us about this particular one, what you're happy about with it.
So Rinn's Crossing. Well, what I'm really happy about, it's been really well received. It's been highly reviewed. It's been shortlisted for a number of different awards, and people who are reading it are really enjoying it. The thing that kicked this book off was actually back in the 90s when let me just give you your listeners some background here. So Southeast Alaska is that part of Alaska that comes down along the coast of British Columbia. And it's a beautiful part of the world. There you go. Move your finger down a little bit. You're not pointing to Southeast Alaska. Oops, now you got your finger right on top of Southeast Alaska.
Yeah, well, I hit the mark.
You hit the mark. And there's a rainforest there.
A rainforest?
Temperate rainforest. And it is just gorgeous. And it's very fertile. The trees are gigantic. The bears are big. Lots of birds. And because the trees are big, back in the 50s, the United States government wanted to start cutting them. And they cut those trees with just, from my point of view, criminal abandon. And ironically, though it created jobs, it was kind of a Soviet operation because it all had to be subsidized. There wasn't enough money in it to make it work without government subsidies. So there's millions and millions of billions of dollars of government subsidies into this program. And in the 90s, I was just looking at it, and it was heartrending what was happening to that forest. And I thought, well, what would it be like to sneak into one of those logging camps and just take out all their machinery, right? Do a little sabotage there. no one would catch me. Those camps are really remote and there's no security there because no one does those things. And I knew it wouldn't do much good because, you know, the industrial onslaught on the wilderness is relentless. You know, they just get more machines and come back, but it'd be really cathartic. But anyways, I was thinking about that. I thought, well, what would happen if somebody else were accused of my crime? What would I do then? And that was the genesis. That was the spark of this novel. And so the novel starts out with, you know, a classic Alaskan mountain man sabotaging a logging camp. And his ex-sweetie gets accused of the crime and a murder neither of them committed that happened the same night. And that's the beginning of the thriller.
The ex-sweetie.
Oh, well, you know, they really wanted to be sweeties, but you know, things intervened, like a murder charge.
Oh, that's a pretty cool thing. And when did it just came out, or what's the?
Yeah, it came out this year.
Right on Amazon, or other ways to get? Can you get it in a local bookstore?
You may have to order it. You certainly in the local bookstores in Alaska, it's on the shelves, but I don't know about the rest of the country. But it'd be great if you went to a local bookstore and asked to order it, because maybe they'd order a couple copies.
I thought you might say something like that, because not for the extra copies, but just you seem a man for the people, for the that's inbred somehow in you.
Yeah, who knows how that got there, but it is true that you know, just personally, those local bookstores where you can wander in and cruise through those shelves, that's certainly been one of the great joys of my life.
You know, there's a comment here in some of the material they sent me that says some observation here: when good people do not good things. You know, and we're good news, you know, so we're promoting the positive way of life. But, you know, it's a good and bad are sometimes like a very closely knit scenario, right? Sometimes the good is related to the bad and the bad related to the good. What is in your scenario here? What is who's good and they didn't do good?
So well, you're right. I mean, even Christ was tempted by the devil, right? But I think in some respects, you know, all of us have the capacity of doing evil things, particularly when the stakes are high. And there's certainly been a lot of research that's demonstrated that, and certainly literature is full of it. And one of the things, so my book, Rinn's Crossing, is a thriller. And usually thrillers have some big black evilness out there, whether it's the Soviet Union or terrorists or whomever. But I wanted the evil people to really be good people who are pushed by their circumstances to do bad things. And so there are four main characters in this novel, and three of them were at one time friends, and their friendships were ripped apart as they had to make choices about what was important to them in Alaska, all right, that led them to betray each of their friends. They're good people, the stakes got high, and they did bad things.
Why do we need, you know, in today's day and age, why do we need wood?
Why do we need wood? Well, you know, your shirts are made out of wood. If you got a rayon shirt, it's made out of wood. But
I don't need a rayon shirt. Do I never have to iron it? No. You have to iron it. Why do we need wood? Why don't we leave the wood alone? Is what I want to ask you. Why can't we leave the wood alone?
Well, I'd be more curious about how you'd answer that question. I mean, you got to see a wooden door right behind you.
Yeah. Okay. I'll agree. Yes, I have a wooden door. Okay. I would be happy. I don't need the wooden door. I could be I could have had just a glass door. If the glass, I don't know, probably glass has its environmental. Everything has its environmental concern. All right, I'm aware of that. I was a Boy Scout, and so you learn about, you know, everything has some scenario to it. Okay, but I guess I don't know why I'm picking on wood, but I think wood seems to be one that is so pretty. Those trees are just so pretty, and everybody says, you know, they put off some oxygen, and so, you know, helps our Mother Earth breathe, and so on. And we can use other man-made cement, or maybe cement has its. Everything has its problem. I don't know. I just wondered, because you're a lobbyist.
So the way I'd answer you specifically to Southeast Alaska is that the wood that's being cut there is old growth timber. So an old growth is a ecosystem that has evolved over thousands and thousands of years and is tremendously bioproductive and produces, as you said, oxygen, produces lots of environmental services, both to other creatures and to ourselves. And everywhere else in the United States, there's no more old growth cutting on federal or publicly owned lands, except in Alaska. It's the only place where there's old growth. And, you know, we say wood is renewable, and that may be true, but the old growth ecosystem is not renewable, not in less than centuries. So when you come in and you destroy an old growth community, biological community, you're not going to get that back. You may get trees back, but you're not going to get the ecological community back. So what we were fighting for in Alaska is to stop the old growth cutting, the few remaining acres of old growth that are, you know, our heritage trees, to stop that cutting. And to get, you know, the wood fiber that we want from second growth, or what we call young growth. And there's plenty of forests around the world, and certainly in the country, where there's second growth that can be cut. And then it's more like a crop than it is an ecosystem.
Interesting. Okay, so you studied this. What did you study in school? Did you go to school?
I did go to school. I studied history.
History.
And then I have a master's in English literature.
Master's in English literature. All right. Well, these are all good things for you, I imagine, and all the kinds of nice things you like to do. What is your latest? Like today, what are you going to do the rest of the day, besides probably do a lot of interviews?
Well, we're actually having our Thanksgiving today. You know, the difficulty of family logistics in the time of COVID made Friday evening our Thanksgiving. So as soon as this interview is over, I am rushing home to get started on Thanksgiving dinner.
And home is where?
So right now I have two homes. My fiance lives in a small community called Bath, Maine, on the coast of Maine.
Oh, I know Bath, Maine. Yeah.
You do?
I do.
And I have a family home farther east on the coast of Maine in Washington County, up towards Canada, on a little peninsula called Petite Manane. And I have a cabin there that I've lived for a number of years.
Oh, wow. That's nice up that way.
Yeah,
I've never been up that way. I've wanted to go up that way a lot, but I never got up there. And then I wanted to go further than that way. I wanted to go up there to Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. It's sort of that way, isn't it?
Oh, well, yes. Nova Scotia is, and the Newfoundland, of course, is an island off the coast. And that's my next project. Right now I'm building a boat. It's a rowing boat, 17-foot wherry, and I'm going to row it around Newfoundland, hopefully in 2023 or maybe 2024.
You know, I spent a lot of time with this guy, Reed Stowe, and I was his broadcaster when he ran around the world with his wife, Sonia. She got off for 305 days. He went for 1,152 days. And I was his broadcaster, all right? And this guy, and I got him a phone. I got him a Garmin phone, actually through IBM. And my buddy there, because they were my client, the multicultural marketing and advertising agency also. And I got him this phone, and he would call me from the seas. And he said, there's nothing out here.
There's a lot out there.
Well, he said it's nothing like in the sense of when you get closer to shore, you have more fish, right? In the middle of the ocean, he said it was kind of desolate, you know, because yes, there's things out there, but then he would also call me, and there'd be big waves. He'd be talking about big waves coming his way and stuff. Sailing is not such an easy task, is it? Isn't it? I thought it's rough up there by that Newfoundland. Isn't it rough?
Oh yeah, it'll be rough, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So can I tell you a story?
Sure.
So I sailed, as you mentioned, I sailed around the world in a 25-foot wooden boat. And when I was leaving New Zealand and then heading over to Australia, it was November, which is springtime there. And it was probably pushing the season. And to get to Australia, I was headed to Melbourne, which is southeastern Australia. So I was crossing the Tasman Sea, and the Tasman is got this really brutal reputation for being a bumpy sea. And every few days I'd have this gale. And gale, you know, the winds are 35 knots or something. It's something I could deal with without too much problem. But about 2 weeks into the passage, I had a storm. I woke up one morning and the clouds were just bilious. It was just horrific. And the waves kept getting bigger and bigger, and the winds kept getting stronger and stronger. And I mean, it's a long story, but I'll make it really short. That night, after a whole day of that storm blowing, it was 10 o'clock, and this was cold. It was really cold. It was dark. And I was down below, and the boat got hit by a wave and turned upside down. And I got thrown up onto the ceiling of the boat, and you know, a sailboat's designed to flip right back up. And she did. She flipped right back up, and it threw me down into the bilges. All the floorboards had come out. And she'd sustained some damage. Her whole cabin side was knocked over, and there was a crack in the deck, and water was pouring down below. And that was my story of a storm. I had several storms, but that was the only one that knocked me down.
My heart is pounding for you already. Well, you know, you're talking to me. You're here talking about it. So that's a good. Well, you must love it out there. You must love it out there.
There's some glorious days. I'll tell you, some glorious days, and you see the sun come up, you know, out of the ocean and turn the sky from black to burgundy to deep blue, and then that pale early morning blue before it jumps into the sky.
You got that right behind you. Why can't you just stay home and look at that painting?
Well, I could. I'd rather go do something else.
Well, I'll look at the painting. You hit the surf, hit the beach. Why Rinn? Who's Rinn? Why do you call him Rinn?
Well, Rinn is the main character of the book, Rinn's Crossing.
Right. But why do you call him Rinn? That's an interesting.
I call him Rinn because when I was thinking of the book, me and my sisters went over to Amsterdam. One of my sisters is an artist, and she wanted to look at some Rembrandts. So we all went over to Amsterdam in the Netherlands and to cruise through the museums. And I had this book, the plot kind of developing in my head, and I hadn't named the main character yet. And you know, Rembrandt's name is Rembrandt van Rijn. It's R-J-I-N-N, and that was a little too exotic for an American. So I just got rid of the J and called him Rinn. So that's why I called him Rinn. It was totally arbitrary, just like the word.
All right, good. Well, that's what I thought it was. All right, you know, I'm so smart. I sensed the whole scenario.
Yeah, you saw it was allusion to Rembrandt, which has nothing to do with the story.
But it's a good but there's always something about everything. If you sort of like kind of know when you need to know. That's a beautiful thing. Well, congratulations on doing a lot of good things. I ask everybody also, because we've been involved with the International Day of Peace, which is the United Nations Day, for over almost 20 plus years. And so we do a concert in Times Square, and we try to get everybody on. We're kind of one world kind of people. I'm a John Lennonist. And so we're trying to just promote that how good we got it, and just be hugging and kissing. I imagine you're that kind of man too. Want to make nice things happen in the world with nice people. And so I ask people, what does peace mean to them? So if you wouldn't mind, Russell Heath, what does peace mean to you?
Well, I'd say it means a few things. But one thing I would say, you know, so I'm a coach, I'm a life coach, and I work with people mostly in this country, but I've got several overseas clients. And what brings peace to people, right, is bringing, or what brings peace to the world is when people bring peace to themselves. And to do that, they've got to look inside, and they've got to take, in essence, I don't want to say control, but they've got to learn who they are. And particularly they have to learn their shadow. They have to learn their dark side. So as we talked earlier, you know, this morning or earlier in the show, all of us has the capacity for evil. And if we pretend that we don't have that capacity, we'll never understand evil, and we'll never understand the evil that we're capable of. We won't be able to bring peace to ourselves unless we engage our own capacity for evil. And I know, I mean, my family's Quaker. My father was a conscientious objector in the Second World War. There weren't a lot of them. And Quakers are pacifists. But I've met a lot of violent pacifists, a lot of people who want the world to be the way they want it. And they're very violent in that sense. And it's an internal violence. It may not be a fisticuffs. It may not be a violence with guns. And to bring a peace to the world, I think you have to bring peace to yourself. And the only way you can bring peace to yourself is when you have faced your own demons. Again, Christ went out and he was confronted, he was tempted by the devil. And to me, I see that psychologically. He was tempted by his own capacity for evil. And unless you've dealt with that, you can't bring peace either to yourself or to the world. So for me, peace is a product of our own, of having a good, deep relationship with our own humanity.
Very nicely stated, beautifully stated, and an appropriately stated commentary on life. And it's a good time to do that in this holiday-ish season. Have a nice Thanksgiving with your family and friends. And I've enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking some time with me.
All righty. Thank you, Paul.
So you take care. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.